and our next guests have been happily married for 24 years, but they have a rather unique way of keeping the spark alive.
After experiencing a lull in their relationship, Stewart and Molly Roden Winter decided to open up their marriage and began dating and sleeping with other people.
They say that the marriage has never been stronger, and now they join us live from their home in New York to tell us more. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you on the show this morning. Needless to say, we're all fascinated by what it is that you've done, and I know you've written a book about your relationship. Molly, I wonder, 24 years ago when the two of you got married, if you ever envisaged this would be what your relationship would become?
No, I don't think I would have predicted it exactly, but it didn't come completely out of left field. It was something we talked about before we got married, but I wasn't sure if it was something I would ever want to pursue in earnest.
Mm-hmm. And Molly, you were the one who instigated this, is that correct?
Yeah, it sounds a little more calculated when it's put that way. It was a little more of just a reaction to where I was in life at the time. Our children were 3 and 6 years old. I was staying home with them for a time instead of working as a teacher as I had been. And I kind of just hit the end of my rope and stormed out one night and ended up meeting somebody. Luckily, I'm married to Stewart, so when I talked to him about the fact that I was having this, kind of crush, he told me you should go for it and didn't think it would threaten our marriage. And turns out he was correct.
Was that a surprise to you, Molly, or Stewart had always been quite open about the idea that he's not a particularly jealous guy and this is something that he would be interested in having involved in the relationship?
Yeah, it didn't surprise me. What ended up surprising me was my own feelings about it. I thought I would not ever be able to handle my own jealousy or that it would just, blow up our marriage. And so the book more tells the story of those first 10 years because it really was a long process of getting comfortable with this whole, style of marriage.
Yeah. And Stewart, were you shocked when she came to you and told you this, or were you pretty open to it?
I was pretty open to it because when we got married, she had less experiences before marriage than I did. I knew it was going to come around.
Okay.
So what happens then, Molly, when you've come to Stewart, you've explained this, he said, oh, go for it, I'm well up for this being part of our lives. I mean, making that next step from it sort of being a fantasy or an idea or a flirtation to being something practical is a big step. How did that go? How hard was it?
It was very hard, and we didn't have a lot of resources. So this was back in 2008. It's part of the reason I wrote the book, in fact, because I feel like there are just so few stories out there of what it's like to navigate an open marriage. So one spoiler alert, my parents also had an open marriage. So one of the people that I really relied on and confided in was my own mother. Wow. And she was there. She was the only person I knew who had successfully navigated open marriage as well. And my parents are still married. They're in their 80s, and it's not, about physical intimacy anymore, but they still have their partners as friends. So I had that, really kind of incredible confidant and guidance. And I also, we did a fair amount of couples therapy and individual therapy because it is a lot. It's a lot to work through.
Yeah, and do you have a set standard of rules? And did they also change as the relationship changed as well?
Oh yeah, everything changed. Everything changed pretty quickly. We had originally, it was like, you can't fall in love, you can't have sleepovers, you can't date people named Ted, and then suddenly, everything went out the window because we both dated a Ted, just joking. But yeah, no, it was, you find out that you try to put rules on something and eventually everything is up to negotiation. And we eventually realized that, all right, we're adults, we can handle this, and it actually worked out fine.
So Molly, Stewart was more open to the idea when the relationship first got together. You weren't so sure. So he's probably always going to be okay with the jealousy side of things. It's not his style. How did you cope when suddenly Stewart is seeing other women that you're having to contend with as well?
Yeah, well, the jealousy part was very hard for me. I'm in a very different place now than I was. Part of the reason that I got over it is because I realized that jealousy is just a mask for more emotions under the surface. For me, I think there was a lot of insecurity. There was fear about blowing up our marriage. And as time went on, and as I saw that seeing other people, having relationships with other people actually only made us appreciate each other more, and realize that what we have is so special that it can't be replicated anywhere else. Not that we don't also have, we now also do have loving relationships with other people. That no falling in love rule fell by the wayside because we both realized that wasn't really going to be sustaining to us to have casual relationships that didn't involve emotions. And so we ended up in a very different place now than we were.
Okay. And Molly, do you tell each other everything? Is everything kind of out on the table, or do you keep certain things separate?
Yeah, I think it's more about knowing what the other person needs to hear and wants to hear. It's more about, you know, being respectful both of the other person's feelings and your own privacy. I'm not a person who would, in any relationship, I think, allow, you know, I wouldn't want my partner looking at my phone or reading my diaries or things like that. I think it's important in a marriage to retain your individual self and some freedom to be. And if you have enough trust and respect for one another, it's not hard.
I wonder, Stewart, because one of the things that often we've talked about on the show as we've come to this interview is that barely got enough time to manage life and my wife and the 2 children I've got, let alone 4 or 5 other partners, 1 or 2 I've been in love with or had relationships with for 9 years. Do you ever get to the point where I just can't be bothered? How do you fit everything in?
I don't sleep. It's pretty much just a steady diet of amphetamines. Actually, no, it actually works out. I mean, it's just like you have friends and you keep in touch with the friends. Like, you basically see each other when you can. And, you know, it doesn't have to be these extensive 7-hour, you know, days together. It could just be a couple of hours just going out to dinner or just catching up.
Does it ever get too much for you, though, Molly? Do you ever think, oh, crikey, I haven't seen Ted for a few months now. I'm getting grief from him because I'm still seeing Stewart and I've got to service Paul as well or go out for dinner with Paul. Do you ever...
See my kids.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Do you ever get, oh, I've bitten off too much that I can chew here or anything?
Yeah, there's actually a term in polyamory which is polysaturated, and I think it's so funny. I have definitely gone through periods of polysaturation where I'm like, okay, tone it down, let's get back to the basics. But one lovely thing about it is that the default setting is very different than it would be in a conventional monogamous relationship. So we're constantly kind of negotiating and thinking about what is it that's going to fulfill us, bring us joy, bring balance to our lives. And we're not just settled into a rut the way I think can sometimes happen in a long-term marriage.
And you guys have kids. They're older kids, grown-up kids. What do they think about it?
Yeah, they're 19 and 22, and so the open marriage started when they were 3 and 6. So they didn't know about it until their early teen years, and you know, it was hard for both of them in their own ways. They're very different people, but I think it's hard for any teenager to kind of wrap their head around, especially their mother as a sexual being. This is not what we talk about in society, but I think it's important for my sons to know that I'm a whole person. I still keep boundaries. We keep our privacy. They don't need to know everything. Although my older son did want to read the book, and I said, if you want to read it, go for it. He told me he skipped, as he called them, the nitty-gritty parts. But my younger son has not read it and does not want to read it, and I think that's a very valid choice.
I'd imagine that the most important thing for your boys is that the connection between the two of you, Stewart, is as strong as it's ever going to be, and that's not going anywhere soon.
No, definitely not. It's made us better. It's made us, you know, improve the relationship. Like, I feel like everyone's like, oh, it's got to be so strange. It's really not. I still love my wife, and I love her more because I know much more about her, and I think I know much more about myself from this experience.
Well,
amazing.
Thank you so much, Molly and Stewart.
There's the book. More is the book that has been written by these guys, Molly Roden Winter, a memoir of an open marriage. And there is a lot of fantastic testimonies on the back. This book about open marriage is going to blow up your group chat. Breathtakingly candid. Fascinating, guys. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having
Bye-bye.
us.